Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit HomeGain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to HomeGain.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Real Estate 360 Live. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper, joined today by my guest, Louis Cammarosano, the general manager of HomeGain. Quick reminder, Real Estate 360 is designed to build the Washington, D.C. Metro's housing and credit markets. If you ever have any questions, concerns, or real estate needs, the best number to reach out to us is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030. Louis, jumping back into your survey, I do know that there's a second question, or I don't know if it's more. There's more than 2 or 3 questions, but one of them is you give the approval rating for Obama, and how did that tie in, especially in like states like Virginia where the housing market's faring so well?
Okay, well, historically, our survey of realtors has shown that they are not a fan of the president, with upwards to 70-75% disapproving of his performance. However, in Virginia, let's pull it up here, I think Virginia is one of the states where they actually approve of him by 50%.
Okay. Not
bad. And Maryland is another 50%. So again, you're taking the D.C. metro area where the economies are relatively good. And basically, I think no matter what anyone says, they don't pay too much attention to policies. They pay attention to, remember, it's the economy, stupid. If the economy's doing poorly, the president's going to get blamed. If the economy's doing well, the president's going to get credit. And it kind of shows in our survey that Maryland, Virginia, he does pretty well. And the states where he's doing poorly, Arizona, 80%. Texas, I guess there may be it's 80% disapproval. I think there may be a bias against him. Also in the South, Georgia, 77%, and so on. There's a lot of data we talked about in the last segment and also in this segment. If you're interested, for the listeners, if you go to blog.homegain.com, you can see all the results. There's pie charts, graphs, comparisons, and then links back to prior surveys. So you go to blog.homegain.com, you can check all that out. It's really good for a data junkie. You get a lot of information.
That's good stuff there, Louis. And I think one of the things that you had said was interesting, too, and that your survey alluded to, less homes that are actually like going into foreclosure now, something only like 1 in 5 now. And
it showed that real estate agents are having, nearly 40% of their markets are not foreclosure.
Right.
They've been very high. At some point, I remember, when I started in real estate in the early 2000s, real estate agents didn't want to touch foreclosures. That was some kind of special niche area that only certain real estate agents did. Most didn't want to deal with it, and they weren't a large percentage of the market. At one point, and I think it's still the case, between foreclosures and short sales, you're over 50% nationally.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I was like, that statistic kind of, seems about right to me, because I think that there's been a couple studies that have said nearly about 16 million homes are probably currently underwater. So when you start to factor in, okay, well, if less foreclosures and more people, are still trying to figure out what they're going to do with their property, whether they're distressed or they're just trying to strategically get out of a bad investment. I feel like that the banks themselves are just, realizing that foreclosure is just probably the worst option possible. We have, a lot more short sales transactions that are actually getting pushed through and becoming more successful. So I feel like, there's a lot of areas that, a lot of homes are still way underwater. And I don't think that no matter how the economy, how much better it gets in the next year or two, they're probably going to still be underwater.
They'll be underwater, I suppose, until that inflation kicks in and just raises all prices. But there's another kind of dynamic that's at play right now. All the people over the last 4 years probably struggled with the moral issue of whether they should just walk away from their homes, and many of them did that. However, there's probably a lot of people who've continued to pay their mortgage and would never do that, and they've decided that regardless that they made a contract to pay the mortgage, they're going to pay it. But because they're underwater, they have no intention of selling their home. So I think that's what economists call sticking on the downside, where they're not even thinking of putting their house to market, even though it could be a potential short sale or a foreclosure.
Yep.
And when that happens in larger numbers, the inventories go down.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to put those homes on the market, and then you're dealing with an inventory shortage.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem here in a lot of parts of Northern Virginia as well. There are a lot of homes that are still underwater with sellers that have no intentions of selling, like you're suggesting, and I think that probably is part of the problem here. Why there's not enough sellers. There's a lot more buyers out here than there are sellers, and if they're not willing, if the seller's not willing to put their house on the market as a short sale, then we're not really, they're just. These homes aren't going to come available. And it's I think that this is a trend that's probably worth noting, Lewis, especially in areas, that have pretty good employment. It's just kind of odd to me, but I think that a lot of Northern Virginia areas really took a beating during that downturn. And even though we have great employment, prices in some areas, like in Prince William County, they went back almost 50%.
Sure, but look at a couple who's working. That maybe they're both government workers making $100,000 each. They're living in that house. They like the house. In some respects, it's less relevant that the house is underwater because they're continuing to live there, and they've managed their finances around paying that mortgage. They probably refinanced if they could. So it's not a situation for those types of people where they're looking to sell.
Well, and it's not the end of the world either. I mean, a lot of these people are still probably somewhere maybe around the 5%, 6% range, even if they're not able to refinance. And I think that from speaking to hundreds and hundreds of different people, everybody gets really upset at the fact that they're stuck at 6% and that they don't have the opportunity to refinance to the sub 4% levels.
That's not that bad, though.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of things, in the scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things, 4, 5, 6%, they're still great interest rates.
Sure, look at the guy who has $1 million portfolio and he loses, 6-7% one year.
Well, and this is
bad, but it's not the end of the world.
Not the end of the world. And I think to put things in perspective, Lewis, so there's a couple companies out there that will do hard money loans, is basically what I call them. If you remember back when a lot of self-employed borrowers would take stated income loans, where if you're self-employed, obviously you write down a lot of things, so your adjusted gross income is not always what it needs to be in order to get a conventional loan. Well, hard money loans now have 2 or 3 different companies that actually specialize in them, and they're requiring anywhere from 35 to 40% down on a property. Okay, so there's a lot of risk taken out by just such a substantial down payment, but the interest rates on those are somewhere between 9.99, and 10.99%. Okay, so would you rather have 4, 5, 6, or buy a home where you would be paying in the upwards of 9 to 10%? Because see, investors, they have to make a return on the money to be able for it to make sense for them. And that's why every week we're talking about, where interest rates are right now. It's not beneficial for anybody as far as on the investment side, whether they're a bank or another hard money lender, to lend out at sub 4%. It doesn't make sense. So, that
shows that the market is artificial.
It definitely is. And for people out here, there are a lot of people that are still going through with these hard money loans at 9.99 and 10.99 and thinking that it's not that bad because of the risk associated, where they're able to say that they make $300,000, but yet they're writing off $250 of it. So, I would urge people to kind of look at things like this because it's not the end of the world. And if you're going to stay in it for the long haul, if you're gonna keep that property, or you're going to wait till you're in a position, a 30-year mortgage. Technically, if you're at 6%, whatever it may be, if you make one extra payment per year, you can take a 30-year note to a 22 with just one extra payment per year. So, there are some scenarios where you can really speed up, the actual principal reduction on your loan to be able to put yourself into a better position. I've even had certain, clients and other people that have asked the question, well, what else is out there that I have options? Well, a lot of people have retirement accounts. Now, I'm not always going to sit here and say, hey, it makes the most sense for you to borrow money from your retirement account, because a lot of times people have been borrowing from their retirement accounts 3 to 4%. So if you can borrow that money at 3 to 4% to pay down to where you can get your property to be able to refinance it and then get an interest rate of sub 4%, locking you into, a cost of shelter sub 4% interest rates,
That's clever.
That is very clever, and you're utilizing your own money. It's maybe costing you 3-4%, which is the same as what your mortgage is going to be costing you. It's a win-win situation.
And also, the money, the danger there, though, is the money that you're borrowing, because it's in a 401k plan, is probably all in stocks.
Yes.
No stocks go up and down.
Nope. Well, the one thing that they could potentially do, Louis, is to tell their, whoever's managing their money to put something into something that's not as risk adverse.
Sure, they have money markets and
yeah.
they have some other guaranteed interest funds as well. Probably.
Yeah, and a lot of people just they can't get over, well, I don't want to do that. And I think the reality of it is if you want these interest rates now and you have the ability to pull money from somewhere else, and don't sit there and complain about it if you have the means to do something. There's a lot of people right now that I know that are pulling money all day long from accounts just so that they can take advantage of these interest rates, and I can't blame them one bit because, like I said, when you're talking about 3.5% fixed 30-year mortgages, it's incredible.
When you talk about once in a lifetime, it's not only once in a lifetime that you will get those interest rates, but you'll benefit from those rates for a lifetime, for 30 years.
Yeah. And now, so these are people that can get conforming or FHA loans at these interest rates. Now, I have a whole nother group of people that's like, can you just find me a loan? I'm willing to pay whatever interest rate. And I'm like, okay, well, there are these alternative loans, which are basically hard money loans where the investor doesn't really care as long as you got a decent credit score, maybe 6 months reserves in the bank account. If you're willing to put down 35-40%, you can get a loan too. It's going to cost you 9.99 probably to 10.99 depending upon your qualifications. But those loans are out there. So, I would just really tell everyone out there that, I think everybody, it's almost like this housing frenzy all over again, Louis.
Where in the DC Metro.
In the DC Metro area, it really is. It's kind of like dog eat dog and whatever I can do to get this house. So that is really a telling sign to me of where things are headed. Because, when I have, investors now that are willing to pay whatever interest rate just to get their hands on a property, they feel like it's the market that they should be in. But we're coming up on a break. When we come back, I'm going to jump into the national headlines of real estate and how that relates to what's actually going on in the local real estate markets and what you guys should pay attention to when we come back.